Dear friends, today we'll start with a new topic, that is the sources of history of ancient India. This topic will be helpful for the BA and MA students, and also it is useful for those who are preparing for UPSC, OPSC, SSB, SSC, TGT, PGT and other competitive examinations. So let's start with this sources of history. All that help in the formation of history can be termed as sources of history. The tradition of writing history had not developed in ancient India, as our country could not produce the men like Herodotus and Thucydides of Greece or Livy and Tacitus of Rome. Later on, when the importance of writing history was felt, we did not have any scope to know it, because all our writings were only religious and it was moral in nature. However, the inquisitiveness and consistent efforts of some scholars no doubt could shed light on our glorious past. It became possible because they could read out the history of our country from indestructible inscriptions, edicts, excavated materials, coins, and also from the religious text by separating facts from fiction. These materials, from where they could collect information regarding our past, are called as sources of history. Sources are considered as the basic raw material for recreating or rewriting history of the past. The objective of history is to throw light on the past. This is done through exploration and study of historical sources. So, historians gather information from various sources of reconstructing history. The sources that a historian uses are all the things that they have survived or have remembered from the past. So, history is not a mere narration of events from any one source. It has to be counterchecked through a variety of sources to produce a clear, vivid and genuine narration of history. The sources of history for the reconstruction of ancient Indian history can be divided broadly into three aspects, that is the literary aspects, archaeological sources and foreign accounts. So, let us first go to the literary sources. Literature, as we know, that it is regarded as the mirror of the contemporary society. It reflects the social condition, norms, political condition, laws, religion, culture and many other aspects of the society. The literature in ancient India was very rich. Literature both in religious and secular form which contains information is directly or indirectly related to history. So, let us go first this religious literature. Religious literature forms one of the oldest branches of ancient Indian history. Religious literature is again subdivided into Hindu religion literature, Buddhist religious literature and Jain religious literature. The Vedas are the oldest of the Hindu religious literature. The term Veda has been derived from the original Sanskrit word Ved, which means knowledge or to know. Among the Vedas, the Rig Veda is considered as the oldest, and it is also considered as the oldest text of the world. So, it gives us historical information about the political system, social, economic and cultural life of the Aryans. It is a collection of hymns by Aitreya and Kausika Brahmanas of the priestly families. These hymns were recited at the time of sacrificial rites and other rituals with utmost devotion. It contains 1028 hymns or suktas and is divided into 10 mandalas or chapters. The 10th is said to have an added latter. It contains the famous Purusha Sukta hymn that explains the origin of a four caste system or Varna system in India. The oldest hymns are mainly found in so-called family books, 2nd, 7th of mandalas. Book 9th is dedicated to God Somo. Gayatri Mantra forms the most notable sacred hymns of Rig Veda. The Samveda represents the hymns of Rig Veda in poetic form. It derived its roots from the word saman, that is melody. So, it can be called as a collection of melodies. So, it has 1549 or a 1810 slokas, which were sung on the holy occasion of Yajnas. The Yajurveda contains the procedure for conducting sacrifices and rituals. It has 40 chapters and 2000 mantras. Satpatha Brahmana was considered with this Veda. It describes the methods of performing different sacrifices. So, it has two branches, that is the Krishna Yajurveda, dark or black Yajurveda, and white Yajurveda, that is the Shukla Yajurveda. So, it contains 1817 verses. The Atharva Veda contains facts related to medicine, spells, charms and rituals. This Veda is otherwise known as Brahma Veda. It comprises assorted subjects like magic, black magic, superstitions, etc. In Atharvaveda we find there are 20 mandalas, 731 suktas and 5839 mantras. This book gives detailed information about the family, social and political life of the latter Vedic period. Each Veda has its own Sanghita. Vedas are to be studied with caution for their historical merit. Regarding the Brahmanas explain the hymns of the Vedas in an orthodox manner. They are written in prose or are ritualistic in nature. Every Veda has several Brahmanas attached with it. The Brahmanas of Rig Veda are known as Aitreya and Kausik Brahmanas. Taittiriya Brahmana belongs to Krishna Yajurveda and Satpatha Brahmana belongs to Shukla Yajurveda. Gopatha Brahmana belongs to Atharva Veda. The word Aranyaka means forest, and these are also called the forest books, were written mainly by the hermits and students living in the jungle. The word Upanishada is derived from the root word, that is the Upnis, which means to sit near someone or to sit near the Guru to learn. These treatises with Guru and Sishya specify the philosophical knowledge and spiritual learning. There are 108 Upanishads composed between 800 BC to 600 BC and completed in 600 BC. The most popular even Upanishads are Kena, Isa, Prasana, Mundaka, Mandukya, Aitreya, Taittiriya, Chandogya, Brihadaranyaka, Shweta Statra. So, all these also give the information about the social, religious and economic condition of the Aryans. Next is the Vedangas. In due course, for proper due study of the Vedas, supplementary sciences called as the Vedangas were developed. There are 6 Vedangas: Sikhya, Jyotisha, Kalpa, Vyakarana, Nirukta, Chanda. Sikhya Vedangas deals with pronunciation, speech production or phonetics. Jyotisha Vedanga deals with astronomy, the science of heavenly bodies. Kalpa Vedanga, it is related to the rituals, means the manner of performing divine service, or a book containing a body or code of ceremonies. Vyakarana deals with grammatical treatises. Nirukta Vedanga deals with etymology, which means the science and investigation of derivation and original signification of words. Then Chanda Vedanga deals with the material rules and literary means of metrics, and deals with the theory of measurement, the art of science of verification. Then the sutras, there are three sutras, Griha Sutra, Dharma Sutra and Sulva Sutra. The Griha Sutra explains the household duties of a family man. The Dharma Sutra deals with the social duties as well as the sacred and secular laws. Sulva Sutras deals with the rules for measurement of building palaces and like fire altars. Then the Upavedas, in addition to the Vedangas, there are 4 Upavedas dealing with the secular topics such as Ayurveda, which deals with botany and medical science. Dhanurveda, it deals with military science, that is different war techniques and name of different types of weapons. Then Gandharva Veda, it is the subject, it is the sub-Veda of Samveda. Then Shilpa Veda, it is the sub-Veda of Atharva Veda, which deals with the architect and construction of the buildings. So there are also Dharma Shastras. The Dharma Shastras deals with the laws and judicial procedure of the Aryans. These Dharma Shastras contains an enormous mass of rules, laws, customs and rites of Vedic times. So next is the Puranas. The Puranas furnish interesting information about the past. There are 18 number of Puranas which are written in Sanskrit language. The Puranas are voluminous treatises embracing the almost every possible subject like mythology, history, philosophy and sacred law, more or less the real histories of ancient India. These Puranas were written during the period of 3rd century AD to 1000 AD. Out of the 18 Puranas, the most important Puranas are Matsya, Vayu, Brahmanda, Vishnu, Garuda, Markandeya, etc. These Puranas throws valuable aspects on historical events and historical geography of our country. So it helps us in reconstructing the political, social, economic and religious history of ancient India. So each Purana is divided into 5 parts, that is the Sarga or evolution of earth, Pratisarga or recreation of the earth, Vamsa, that is the list of gods and goddesses, then Manvantara, that is the description of different sages like Dwapara, Kali, different ages, and that is the Dwapara, Kali, etc., Satya, Dwapara, Kali, etc. So then Vangsanu Charita, genealogical list of the kings. So next is 6 darsanas or Sada darsanas, that is there are Sankhya Shastra, Purva Mimamsa, Uttara Mimamsa, Vaiseshika Shastra, Yoga Shastra, Nyaya Shastra. The Sankhya Shastra was written by Maharshi Kapila. Its fundamental principle is the Purusha and Prakriti, that is soul and nature. Prakriti is developed by 3 kinds of gunas or merits, that is Sattva, Raja, Tama. Then Purva Mimamsa, it sought to explain and revive the Vedas concerned with the ritual. Then the Vaiseshika Shastra, the founder of this school is Ulluka Kannada, the greatest of his commentators, perhaps lived in the 6th century. Then this Vaiseshika is concerned with the Padarthas, which are divided into 6 categories, that is the Dravya, Vishesha, Samanvaya, etc. There 9 dravyas and 17 qualities. So then Yoga Shastra, the basic text goes to the Yoga Shastra Patanjali. Then we have Nyaya Shastra. The founder of this school is Akhapada Gautama. Then I forgotten Uttar Mimamsa. There is another Darshana. These are also called Vedanta. Maharshi Badrayana is said to have formulated its main tenets in the early Christian centuries. Then the epics, the two epics, that is the Ramayana and Mahabharata. The most famous book in Sanskrit literature gives us an insight into the social, cultural and political condition of ancient India. They enlighten us about the movement of Aryans throughout Indian subcontinent, their relations with the local and native communities and tribes, their political thoughts, institutions, societies, social customs, traditions, forest tribes, economy, etc. It deals with the long-term processes like Aryanization of India, inception of urbanization, conflict between the two modes of economics, that is pastoralism and agriculture, etc. In short, to understand India during the 8th century to 6th century BC, these epics proved to be important sources. The Ramayana, written by Maharshi Valmiki, contains 24,000 slokas or couplets and 48,000 lines, and the Mahabharata, written by Veda Vyasa, Maharshi Veda Vyasa, contains 1 lakh slokas or couplets and 200,000 or 2 lakh lines. Both epics are respectively divided into 7 and 18 chapters. The Mahabharata is undoubtedly one of the outstanding works of the world. Then the Bhagavad Gita is part of the Mahabharata. It is said to be the bedrock of Hinduism. It was not composed by Maharshi Vyasa, author of Mahabharata, but was made subsequent additions to the epic. The Bhagavad Gita stands out to be an epitome of Hindu system of thought, emphasizing the doctrines of Niskama Karma. So then the Buddhist, let us go for the Buddhist literature. So the Buddhist literature throws ample light on ancient Indian history. These are 3 parts of the Buddhist literature. So there are 3 parts of Buddhist literature, that is the Pitaka, Jataka and Nikaya. Certainly after the Parinirvana of Buddha, his disciples convened the first Buddhist council at Rajagriha in 483 BC. They codified the teachings of Buddha in Pali language and other dialects, and they also provided historical information of the period. So anyway, the Tripitaka. The Tripitakas are the fundamental Buddhist literature, which means 3 baskets embodying 3 different books of different matters, that is the Sutta Pitaka, Vinaya Pitaka and Abhidharma Pitaka. The Sutta Pitaka, it is the explanation of the Sutta. The Sutta Pitaka is the second book of Tripitaka, and it forms the most important part of the Buddhist literature. Then let us go for the Abhidharma Pitaka is written mostly in the form of questions and answers, and its subject matter is mainly derived from the Sutta and Vinaya Pitaka. The Vinaya Pitaka, on the other hand, it comprises 3 texts, Sutta Vibhanga, the Khandakas, then the Paribara or Paribara Patha. So let us go for the Jatakas. The Jatakas are found the part of Buddhist sacred literature, though written after Mauryan period. The Jatakas contains more than 500 stories of such previous births of Gautam Buddha. So many of these stories are fairly old, possibly even before the time of Gautam Buddha. The Buddhists adopted them for the purpose of inculcating moral lessons. So then Milind Pana is a famous book written in Pali language which explains the Buddhist doctrines in the form of a dialogue between King Milind, who is identified with the Indo-Bactrian king Menander, and a Buddhist priest Nagasena. The book was probably composed in northwestern India about the 1st or 2nd century AD. Then Vishuddha Marga, Buddha Ghosha is the author of the book of Vishuddha Marga. Then Dipavamsa and Mahavamsa. Dipavamsa and Mahavamsa are the chronicle of Ceylon. It was composed in 4th or the beginning of the 5th century AD. It was based on the Simhari's Athakatha or commentary. Mahavamsa is a historical epic of Ceylon, probably the work of the poet of Mahanama, who flourished in the last quarter of the 5th century AD. Then Lalita Shastra was a book of Bipluous Sutras. Then Buddha Charita was composed during the reign of Kanishka by Ashoghosha. Then Sundarananda Kavya, the Sundarananda Kavya is an excellent specimen of Kavya style. Then let us go for the joinery literature. The joinery literature is also very important for the reconstruction of ancient Indian history. Many important facts of ancient Indian history are connected or contained are connected with this joinery literature, which is written in Prakrit language. Joinery literature mainly consists of Angas and Upangas. The Angas and Upangas are 12 in number. And they impart valuable teachings of Vardhaman Mahavir. Then there are 10 prakaranas. The 10 prakaranas means scattered, deal with various doctrinal matters and written in verse. Then the secular literature. The secular literature, like religious literature, also throws ample light on ancient Indian history. It reflects the social customs, traditions and rituals of the ancient people. There are various secular literature like Smriti literature. Smriti literature is an important branch of secular literature. There are the important Smriti texts are Narada Smriti, Manu Smriti, Parasara Smriti, Yajnavalkya Smriti. Then the grammar, Arthashastra and Nitishar. In addition to Smriti literature, Panini's Ashtadhyayi and Patanjali's Mahabhasya are invaluable treatises on Sanskrit grammar belonging to the 4th century and 2nd century BC. It throws light on political, social and religious religions of ancient Indian people. Arthashastra and Nitishar are also come under secular literature. Kautilya's Arthashastra informs about the statecraft of the Mauryan period. It deals with not only with the political philosophy and administrative system, but also international law, military science, trade, commerce, industry, mining, metallurgy, etc. Kamandaka's Nitishara throws light on the administrative system of the Guptas. Then let us go for the historical works and local chronicles. Another important branch of secular literature is historical works. They throw much light on the life and achievements of the important rulers of the ancient period. Visakadatta's Mudra Rakshasa throws light on the end of the Nanda period and the rise of the Mauryas. It also describes the achievements of Chandragupta Maurya, and his other play Devi Chandraguptam mentions about the exploits of Chandragupta II. Then Billana's Vikramaka Charita describes the achievements of Chalukya king Vikramaditya. Ramapala's achievement has also been reflected in Sandhyakara Nandi's Ramacharita. It gives a historical description of the successful revolution in North Bengal, which resulted in the death of the king Mahipala. Then poet Chandabardai describes the glory of Prithviraj Chauhan in his classic work Prithviraj Rasho. Kalhana's Rajtarangani furnishes the genealogical list of the kings of Kashmir. Then Rasamalla of Gujarat and Kritikumudini of Nepal also throws light on the political events of the respective region. Banabhatta's Harsacharita, a biography of Harshavardhan, has great importance as historical literature. Unfortunately, it doesn't give us the account of king's full reign, but ends with the accession of King Harsha. Kataka Rajavangshavali and Udra Desha Rajavangshavali also gives much idea on the ancient history of ancient Odisha. Besides the secular literature, we do have scientific works. That is the Aryabhattam of Aryabhatta, Brihad Samhita of Varahamihira, which deals with mathematics and astrology respectively. In medical science, we do have Charaka Samhita and Sushruta Samhita written by Charaka and Sushruta respectively. It deals with the medicine and surgery of ancient India. So, there are semi-historical literature also. Besides the above mentioned historical works, we come across a variety of semi-historical literature consisting of dramas, epics and short stories that throw light on political, social, geographical and religious aspects of ancient India. In semi-historical literature, we find Kalidasa's dramas like Abhigyana Shakuntala, Malavika Agnimitram, epics like Kumar Sambhavam, Meghadattam, Raghuvansam, Harshavardhana's Nagananda Ratnavali, Priyadarshika, Ashwaghosa's Sundara Ananda Kabya, Brajashuchi, then Sariputta Prakarana, Visakadatta's historical drama Devi Chandraguptam, Bharavi's Kiratarjunyam, Sudraka's Mitsakatikam, Vishnu Sharma's Panchatantra, Gaundia's Brihad Katha, etc. are classic examples of semi-historical literature. The drama Malavika Agnimitram of Kalidasa refers to Pushyamitra Singha, his son Agnimitra, and also his grandson Basumitra. All these works are examples of literary excellence which deal with the historical facts of that period. Then the Sangam literature. Sangam literature developed in South India under the patronage of the several kings, which is written in Tamil language. Talakappiyam, written by Talakappiyar, is a famous Tamil grammar which is the main source of the Tamil history. The Sangam literature comprises about 30,000 lines of poetry, which is arranged in 8 anthologies called Ittukottakai. Then the poems are collected in various groups of hundreds such as Puranaru, the 400 of the exterior, and others. There are 2 main groups, Patti Nekil and Kanaku, and Patu Patu, the 10 songs. So, these are the Sangam literature. Now, let us go for the archaeological sources. In archaeological sources, we can divide the archaeological sources into 3 heads: inscriptions, monuments and coins. So, now let us go for this inscriptions. Of all the archaeological sources, inscriptions occupy a unique position as a source material of Indian history. Inscriptions supply valuable historical facts. The study of inscription is also called as the epigraphy. So, we have various types of inscriptions which convey monarchical orders regarding administrative, religious and major decisions to the public in general. They are called royal proclamations, and there were also prasastis or eulogies. These were written by the court poets who never speak of their defects. Finally, we have many donative or that is the grants for the religious purpose. James Prinsep was first deciphered the Indian inscriptions, the Ashokan inscriptions in 1837. The inscriptions of various types like eulogy and prasasti, orders, records of donations, gifts, etc. are found. The earliest of these inscriptions are those of Emperor Ashoka engraved on rocks and pillars found all over India. It can be divided into 3 heads, that is the major rock edict, minor rock edict and pillar edicts. The Hathigumpha inscription of Kharaveda, the Allahabad, the pillar inscription of Samudragupta and many other rock and pillar inscriptions contain most valuable historical accounts, political, administrative and religious matters that are gathered from such sources. The Allahabad pillar inscription was written by Harisena, the court poet of Samudragupta, is an example of the eulogistic inscriptions. The Ayhole inscription of Pulakeshin II is an example of votive inscription. The Nasik inscription describes the achievements of the Satavahana king Gautami Putra Satakarni. The Ginnar inscription describes the achievements of Rudradamana. Earliest inscriptions, namely the seals of Harappa, are commercial inscriptions. So, some inscriptions were issued by the kings related to the land donations are known as donative inscriptions, and these are recorded in the form of inscriptions. The copper plates issued by the Bhaumakara, Ganga and Gajapati rulers of Odisha are good examples of land donations. Thus the inscriptions gives useful information about the history of India. Then let us go for the monuments. The monuments are another valuable source of material consisting of buildings, statues of stone and metals. The seals and terracotta objects discovered from various sites of Harappa civilization throw welcome light on the economic, religious and social life. Remains of art of Ashokan period reflect the highly developed art style and culture of Mauryan period. Similarly, the stupas at Barahut and Sanchi are the glaring examples of art and architecture belonging to the Sunga period. The seals and ceilings of Gupta period speak about the trade and commerce of that time. The temples of Devgad, Sarnath, Bhitargaon, Mathura, the caves of Ajanta, Ellora, Bagh, etc. speak highly about the architecture or the monumental work of the Gupta period. The discovery of the Takshira threw much light on the history of the Kushanas. The Gandhara school of art, the Gomez Bara statue of Bahubalian at Sravana then Khandagiri and Udayagiri Jaina caves at Bhubaneswar, Ellora of Madhya Pradesh and Jaina caves of Maharashtra, the Parshvanath temple and Pavapuri and Rajgiri in Bihar and Dilwara temple at Mount Abu in Rajasthan speak highly of Jainism. The places like Sanchi, Sarnath, Mathura, Rumindi, Barahut, Kanhi, Dhauri, Jaugarh, etc. are full of Buddhist remains which speak about Buddhism. The Saiva temples of Bhubaneswar, Gujarat, Kanchipuram, Khajuraho, Tanjore, Varanasi, Kashmir, etc. speak a lot about the Saivism. The places like Nachna Kutara, Biraja, Ranipur, Jhariyal, Kamrup, etc. sing the glory of Shaktism. Then let us go for these coins. The coins, apart from the inscription and monuments, coins are also vital and imperishable aids to the reconstruction of history. The study of coins is known as numismatics. So, we do have different types of coins of different periods. Ancient coins are mostly manufactured from gold, silver, copper or lead. Among the coins of ancient India, punch-marked coins of the Maurya period were the oldest. The history of the Sakas, Kushanas, Scythian, Pratyahars and Bactrian Greeks are based on the coins. We get the largest number of coins in the post-Maurya period times made up of lead, tin, copper, bronze, silver and gold for Bactrians, Indo-Greek and Indo-Parthian, Saka and Kushana dynasties. The most important series of coins with which the king clearly engraved on them were those issued by the Greek rulers of Bactria. The Gupta coins speak about the history of the Gupta period. The Samudragupta, in one coin we find him playing a musical instrument, and it speaks about his interest in the music. So, then the foreign accounts. Since time immemorial, many foreign travelers came to India and left an interesting account regarding India during their days of stay in India. Among those foreigners, Megasthenes visited the court of Chandragupta Maurya. He was a Greek ambassador of Seleucus Nicator and one of the generals of Alexander. He has left an account of India in his book Indica. Then a notable Chinese traveler, that is Pai Hen, visited India during the reign of famous Gupta ruler Chandragupta II. He remained in India from 405 to 411 AD. In his famous book Fu Ko Ki, he has discussed various aspects of the Gupta age and also throws lights on the socio religious, economic and political condition of India. Then Huensang visited in the 7th century AD during the reign of Harshavardhan of Kanauj. He remains in India from 630 to 643 AD. Actually, he had come for studying Buddhism in original form, and out of his 8 years in the court of Harshavardhan, in his famous work Siyuki, his famous work was Siyuki, he has described the prevailing socio-religious, political and other condition of India during Harsha's time. Then the Periplus of Erythraean Sea is written in Greek by unknown author, provides valuable data for the study of ancient geography and commerce. The geography of Ptolemy described the geography of India. Pliny's Naturalis Historia was written in Greek language during the 1st century AD. It tells us about the trade between India and Italy. The Tibetan monk Lama Taranatha was a famous historian who wrote about the different conditions of India. His two important books, Kanguera and Tanguera, are the famous sources of information for Buddhism. So, let us conclude that the above sources are regarded as the essential raw material for recreating the past history of India. The sources reflect the historical process and give a chance for studying the past human society. Historians collect information from various sources for reconstructing the history. The sources that a historian uses are all things that have survived or have been remembered from time to time or from the past. In fact, we can say that the ancient India was not lagged behind in historical sources. Although we have not any kind of Herodotus or Thucydides, but we had great sages, great persons who has left many writings in the form of literature, in the form of other sources. So, thank you all. So, please subscribe to my channel and share it among your friends. Thank you.